Okay, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our investments class at the University of Alabama. And I am overly excited to have Karen Bruton with us today. Now, Karen doesn't know all about this, that I have been following Karen ever since I put a Roku box on my television when I was trying to cut the cord. And I saw these two goofy people, Tom and Tony, and I thought, oh, I've never listened to those again. But then they did an interview with this lady called Karen, and they soon named her Karen the Supertrader, and I was infatuated. Karen, as a matter of fact, I started in a Yahoo group back when Yahoo's had groups, and we, for about 5 years, studied your videos and every word that you said. It was an amazing time. And Karen, I credit you and Tom and Tony with getting me into trading. And fortunately now at the University of Alabama, we're able to have an investments class where we actually teach the students their first assignment was to sell a put. So it's an honor having you today, Karen. So Karen, when I look at your life, I see several stages. There's pre-Karen the Supertrader, who had a great life. You had a great job. Then there's
I had a vice president's position.
You had done well.
Yes.
And all of a sudden you get to a point to where you're, ready to retire and to take over the story.
No, I wasn't ready to retire. I got a call to follow Jesus, and I got out of bed late one night, 3 a.m. and I said, God, I'm going to the deep end of the pool and I'm going to jump. And if you don't catch me, I'll drown because I can't swim. He caught me.
Well, the good thing is you didn't drown, Karen. That's great.
I've traveled all over the world, working in small African villages. I've gone to every country except every continent except Australia and Antarctica.
I have a feeling you may be going to at least one of those two.
Oh, I don't know.
Well, Karen, was this around the time when your pastor at the church that you thought that you were not going to, but that you started attending, is this about the time when he asked you, hey, Karen, what is your passion?
It was earlier than that. I moved to Brentwood, Tennessee, and I was a Methodist born and raised, and I went to a big Methodist church and sat on the back row and said, this church is too large for me, but I have to meet the pastor. And I set up an appointment to meet the pastor. He had an amazing sermon that day. And he said, what is your passion? And I said, I majored in applied mathematics at UNC, but I wasn't, I was made a vice president of the two last companies I worked with. And I said, my passion is music and art and theater. And he laughed and he said, no, I'm not asking that kind of passion. And I said, I know you're not. My passion is doing international travel work. And
now, had you done any work at this point internationally?
No. I have visited international countries, and my passion was to move to Italy, but that was before the Lord called me.
So your first trip ends up going to Russia. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, we made over a restaurant into a church, and we had to work all through the painting and puttering and floors and ceilings and windows, and that showed me how to do things.
So you come back from that trip and I guess you're thinking, what more can I do with your ministry
Yes.
overseas? And then you're thinking, how can I fund some things to make even greater things happen? Am I putting words in your mouth, Karen? But tell me how you then take this passion for doing international work and you go, wow, if I just had a way to fund all of this. I'm certainly sure you were doing fine financially, but at this point, you're not carrying the Supertrader.
I'm not. In January 2007, I quit my vice president's job and opened Just Hope International. And I had worked for about 4 months with a nonprofit that exists in Nashville. And every dollar that was given to them, 90 cents went for administrative cost and 10 cents went toward the project. I said I would never do that. And God gave me the gift of trading, and I made millions of dollars in trading, and I put 50% of that money into the Just Hope Foundation, and that paid all of it, the administrative cost. And then I paid everybody that worked for me a high salary.
So tell us about, going from the point though that you go to that first class where and you're kind of fighting that, right? I mean, you didn't think that this was going to be your path to trading in the markets.
No, I didn't, but I studied. I went to every Dan Sheridan class, which was all over the country. He moved around a lot, and we're good friends now. And I studied for 2 years almost and learned how to trade. And then I shifted point by point by point to only trading derivatives, puts and calls. And that's what I'm doing today. And I trade the SPX only. The SPX is a few cents higher than most of like the SPY or the NASDAQ or trading those kinds of trades. The SPX is taking care of me.
And you're trading a little less often now, aren't you, Karen? Last I heard,
I'm trading every Wednesday.
Every Wednesday. That's amazing. From someone who was probably in the room all the time, that the market was open, thinking about it in the morning, and now you're able to do well and just trade a little less frequently because you've got so much time going into your ministry, I think.
Well, I trade only with the Chicago board, and the CFTC came to audit me, and they found nothing wrong with what I was doing. And then the woman that was head of the SEC under Barack Obama era, she put out a memo and said, we're only going after the huge investment companies, and they have their own in-house lawyers, and they're fighting us. Go after the smaller companies because they can't afford to fight us. And 2 weeks later, 2 SEC employees walked into my office and they charged me with fraud. They never could prove I had fraud. I did fraud, but they charged me with it. And I didn't do any fraud or any other thing. I couldn't afford to fight them.
So Karen, let's get up to that point. And I kind of have told the class a lot about you, but let's make sure I'm kind of getting the story straight. You were managing funds. You were managing funds for other people, what, approximately $300 million?
$250 million.
$250 million. You had made profits for your investors, and including yourself that was in there, and I guess the employees that were part, but you had made profits in the financial markets of what, $100,000? I mean, $100 million?
I wouldn't, I don't have that number in my head.
Okay, but it was a substantial amount.
But I made 50% for my investors 1 year, and the lowest I made was 11% 1 year, but I made 20 to 25% every other year.
Karen, this is funny because in your second interview with Tom Sosnoff and Tony Batista, when they were asking, you know, that you had a bad August or something and you had lost 5%, but at the end of the year, you were up 48%. Tom, at that point, shakes his head and hands you the microphone and said, look, you don't need me. You know, here's the mic. You are Karen, the Supertrader. I mean, you were getting these people enormous returns. And here's what I have said. And Karen, I've been not that you needed a defender, but I have defended you in many forums over the internet. And I've said this, I said, listen, y'all are, you know, because people love to jump on successful people. It's unfortunate that people see success and then they see something like an SEC investigation and everybody wants to pile on and say, oh, I knew it was too good to be true. I knew this. And here's what I told people. And Karen, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I said, show me one disgruntled investor in Karen's firm. If there had been one, there would have been many. You would have seen class action suits against Karen. It would be all over the place. But there was not one instance of an investor coming back and saying, we're going to sue the heck out of Karen. Tell us about that, Karen. I mean, you were getting these people, you made these people lots and lots of money.
Lots of money. And the SEC came in. They didn't know a put from a call. They weren't trading on the Chicago board, and the current people that are head of the SEC, they came in and interviewed with the financial board up in Washington, and they asked them a derivatives question. And they said, we can't answer that. You must contact the CFTC or the Chicago Board of Trade. We can't answer that. And they didn't even know how to call and a put were. And they put a gag order on me so that I couldn't talk about this. I've taken that gag order off of me. But they won't allow me allow me to trade for anybody ever again.
So it's a permanent ban on you managing anyone else's money.
Yep.
What were the conversations like with your investors when they get this news that, hey, they're shutting me down, we're out? What was their response?
Well, they couldn't believe what was happening to me. The SEC put it over to another person that they deemed in charge of the trading, and he lost money for the traders.
Wait a minute, they put someone else in charge of the fund?
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Well, they didn't. I had to, but they approved that person.
I mean, that had to be difficult, stepping away from your baby, even though it wasn't something that you wanted to do, to start with. Karen, how were you feeling at that time?
Yeah, I had gone into a deep, dark hole. I couldn't believe what the SEC did to me. And they were in a courtroom, and the judge pointed to me and said, "You're not allowed to open your mouth in this courtroom. If you do, I'm calling the whole thing off, and you will deal with me personally." And then the man got up and lied about what I was doing.
I mean, and anybody that, from people that are around Karen that have seen her interviews, I mean, this is not a vicious and vile woman at all. I mean, Karen, we're all just, in awe of you and what you've been able to accomplish. And for you to be treated by, we talk about the United States and our justice system as being the best, but it really and truly sounds like you were just railroaded and just made an example.
I was railroaded. But I look back on that, and I think I know God is in charge, and I went to see my pastor, and I was in a deep, dark hole, and I didn't know what I could do because all of my people were damaged. They pulled me out of trading. They did a lot to me, and they found me guilty in that courtroom where the SEC stood up and lied about me. And they didn't know a put from a call. They didn't know derivatives, but they charged me with fraud. And I went to my minister that day, and he stood up, pushed a chair to my knees, walked to the back of his office, and he said, "Jesus Christ is sitting in that chair. Talk to him right now." And I started crying, and he came over and lifted a box of tissue off his desk and gave it to me. And he said, "Jesus is sitting right there. Talk to him right now." And I started talking to Jesus, and I felt the pain lift up, 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 up my body. And it just went right out of my head. And I haven't felt that pain since then.
That's awesome, Karen. And then at some point, imagine going through something like this really shows you who your friends were right through this. And
Yes.
fortunately, there were a lot of people that didn't turn their back on you.
There were a lot of people, but there were a lot of people who did turn their back on me.
Yeah, something like that. You really find out who your true friends are, right? I mean, they say if you can count your friends on one hand, you know, you've got a bundle of them. You know, and that's why one of the things, I guess I was one of the first ones to reach out to Tom Sosnoff and say, listen, what are they doing to Karen? And fortunately, Tom, they did not turn their back on you as well. I mean, you came to the Geeks on Parade. You were part of that. You got to speak there. And I think, you know, and Tom and the Tasty crew took a lot of darts for you during that time as well. But I think Tom realized that you were railroaded and that, you know, you were treated bad during the entire process.
Well, I was, but the government can get away with many things.
Karen, we've got a lot of people in our class that, you know, you think of a college class, you know, University of Alabama, you think a lot of people, you know, in their late teens, early 20s. We're fortunate enough in this particular investments class that we have a lot of middle-aged and older people as well who are completing their bachelor's degree. They're working on their master's. You have your master's, and they're taking an investments class and they're wanting to know, how can I be successful? Maybe not to the level of a Karen, but what kind of pearls of wisdom do you have for them and how they can make their way?
Can I talk about my book for 2 minutes?
Absolutely. We were going to definitely cover your book.
This is the Lamb of Wall Street. I didn't name it. The publisher named it. And Simon & Schuster is publishing it all over the United States. They're sending copies of the book all over the United States. And I took that picture on the front. These were 3 women that walked over a mile a day, 4 and 5 times a day, to get water out of a muddy, filthy river to bring home to their village. And when I walked down there with them, and we had a lot of fun that day, but I walked back carrying my bucket. And when we arrived at their village, I called all the people out of their mud huts and wherever they were. And I told them that I was going to put a well in their village. And they just dropped to their knees and thanked God. In 2 days, I hired a professional well drilling service, big trucks, and they came out to the village and drilled a 300-foot well in that village, and it shot up pure, clean water. So they were so grateful to the Lord and what I had done.
I mean, just think of the things that we just take for granted sometimes, right? I mean, like, you know, here you are making these millions of dollars in the market and you're giving away most of the money to the foundation that's doing these things, you know, such as building wells, doing the pineapple plantation so that they can make money. And because the SEC stopped you down, has that hurt Just Hope International, or had you stored up such an amount that you're still able to do the things that you wanted to do with the ministry?
I still have people giving to Just Hope International. And I, out of COVID, I was over in Asia when COVID hit, and I got the last airplane back from Asia. And I've traveled a couple of times. The epilogue in my book is what I found out about my father. My brother and I would ask him questions all the time about what he did in service. He was in service for 4 years in Europe and Northern Africa. And we asked him questions all the time, and he wouldn't answer a single question. I found out 2 years ago that he was a World War II hero. I went to Germany in July and visited the site where he and 3 other Army people dressed up in German uniforms got into the Dachau prison camp, which was the largest in all over, and opened the longest. Hitler had opened it. And they killed every German soldier. They dressed up in German uniforms and they killed every German soldier and set all those prisoners free. I never heard my father talk about that.
And I
He
think
didn't tell us anything.
and it's probably because of the things that he saw, you know, that were so, I mean, your dad ordinarily is not a killer, right? He's not going to go in and kill something, but what he was doing was noble, and that he was fighting, you know, against the Nazis and setting prisoners free. How did you find out about that, Karen? That's amazing that you just found out about that.
I found a bag of pictures in my brother's closet when he died of a heart attack. A friend, he lived in Stanfield, North Carolina, and a friend of his was waiting for him for lunch. And when my brother was late, he drove out to his house and found him dead in the backyard of a massive heart attack. So I'm the last living member of my family. But I found a bag of pictures pushed back in his closet, and I gave them to my niece, who lived in Salisbury, North Carolina, and she lives in China Grove, and she's the captain of the fire department in China Grove. And I called her and asked her if she could take that bag of pictures, because when I died, I imagined the pictures would be thrown away. And she said she would, and I took them to her in China Grove, North Carolina. And she found a bag in the lower part of that paper bag that had pictures of my father in it. And she sent that to the Salisbury art gallery and told the art expert to look that up. And he found that story out about my father. And I asked if he would send the pictures to Washington to the Army headquarters. and verify those pictures. And he did, and they verified it. And I went to the Dachau prison camp in July to pay honor to my father.
That's wonderful, Karen. I'm glad that you have that, and that generations from now on will know the sacrifice that your father did. And in your book, you talk about heartwarming stories about you and your father, making kites out of nothing. Karen, you were like me when I was growing up. I didn't know I was poor.
I didn't know I was poor either.
I had no idea. I mean, and our families, I think, shielded us enough and loved us enough that they showed us enough love and kept us busy that, unless you compared yourself to someone else, you didn't know that you were poor. Karen, talk to us about, we got a lot of females in our class as well. Tell us about some of the obstacles that you had coming up in the workforce, and even when you start trading and doing money investments for other people. Tell us about coming up in that situation.
I didn't think of them as obstacles. I thought of them as challenges. My parents couldn't afford to send me to college. So they just asked that I take a job as a secretary for somebody, or I could type really fast on a manual typewriter, and they thought that I could find a secretary job. And I went into my teacher that I talked to, my guidance counselor, and she said, you're typing about 90 words a minute on a manual typewriter. I think you should go somewhere and be a legal secretary or something like that. And I thought what she was telling me was no good. And I applied at several universities, and I applied for scholarships and loans and everything. And most of the scholarships were given to boys. But I got one scholarship that was given to a girl, and I picked the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, and I worked and had a job and a scholarship, and I took a loan out, and that paid for everything.
I'm glad you did let that teacher say, hey, you can be a secretary, and that you went on to do to crush that. So not that there's anything wrong with being a secretary, but that shouldn't have been the ceiling above your head.
But I wanted a further education, and I got it.
And
but
then
it was a challenge.
And you even talking about when you found out that a male counterpart was making more than you, and you guys were doing the same exact job. Tell us a little bit about that. How that made you feel?
I was approached by my manager, and I was the head of that department, and I reported to a manager. And he said, can you train a new guy that's coming in? He has no experience. He just graduated from college, and can you train him in what we're doing? And I said, I'll be glad to. And when that check landed on my desk, they handed mine to him and handed his to me. And I didn't think anything about it. And I just opened the check. I didn't look at the name on the front. And he was making more than me. And I went to the manager and I said, why is Gary making this much more than me and this much money? And he said, well, he's a man and his wife, they're going to have children someday and blah, 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 blah. And that's why he's making more than you. And I walked out of that office and I was thinking that I could sue him or argue with him or try to do something else. And I calmed down and I quit my job and worked 2 years with a CPA firm. You had to work 2 years for a CPA firm because before you became a CPA. So I worked 2 years and I was the first woman that they hired. And the man in charge came back and we were all sitting together in a big area. And he walked straight to me and he asked me, because his secretary was not working today, he asked me if I'd make him a cup of coffee. And I said to him, I don't drink coffee. I don't make coffee. Ask one of the guys. And I thought he would fire me right then. He didn't.
Oh, that's awesome. Karen, that's what I tell my students too, is that you're getting some hand claps in the room for that one. Karen, one of the things I tell our students is that that's the great thing about the markets is they don't care if you're black, white, gay, straight, short, tall, fat, old, young. The markets are the great equalizer. You push that button, no one has any idea who or what you are, whether you're rich or poor.
That's correct. They don't know who you are.
Just like Tom Sosnoff said, you know, if he would have gone into the SPX pits and said, there is a lady trading thousands of SPX contracts. You don't even know her name, and she's probably the largest, one of the largest retail traders on the planet. And he would have, you know, he would have said they would have no idea that you were going in and trading the number of contracts that you were trading.
That's right.
Karen, let me ask you this. So I remember in your previous interviews that, you know, you were trading in a group of 5 or 6. What are those people doing now? What are they doing? They knew what you were doing. I'm sure that they're probably still involved in some way. And are you still close with them? How's that relationship work?
I don't know what they're doing now. I got fired by the SEC and nobody that I was trading with will talk to me now, except one man. And I have lunch with him from time to time.
Karen, that breaks my heart just hearing that. I can't believe that you brought these people in. I mean, these were people that you met along the way at these seminars that you would go to. You brought them in, showed them, I mean, what you were doing, and not that they didn't contribute, but I guess they're so afraid of the SEC too that they're distancing themselves from you. That's heartbreaking. Now, what about the lady that you went to, your friend? Because we don't hear much about her. When you two first went to the 22,000 Investos seminar.
She's moved away now, and she lives out in Las Vegas, I think, or either California. And she doesn't speak to me either.
Karen, that's incredible. And but look, I'm sure you, as you well know, God places some people in our lives for a season, some places for in our
Yeah.
entire lives. And you know, if they want to move on and go elsewhere, then so be it. I'm sure that, you know, like you said, that you've overcome that. You've released those
Yes.
emotions, you turned it over to God, and you're doing just quite well. Hey, when's the movie coming out? That's what I want to know. And surely they're going to make a movie out of this thing. Can you remember during your first interview with Tom, Vanetta looks at you and she goes, "How are you not a Lifetime movie?" So we got to have a movie out of this some way.
I've heard about a movie from time to time. I've never asked about a movie, but I've been told time to time that they're going to make a movie out of the book. So I don't know when they're going to do that.
Karen, if you had to, I've got a person in mind to play you, but if you had to choose one person to play you, who would that be? Anybody come to mind?
I picked Sally Field.
Sally Field would be great. I was going to say Susan Sarandon. I thought she might be good as well. But yeah, Sally Field would be great for you. Karen, do you mind taking a few questions from our students if they have them? You can either type them to me.
No.
You're fine with that?
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
So anybody want to ask Karen a question about what she's doing? I've got a message from Dale here. He goes, he kind of wants to know how you're trading now. And you're trading on Wednesdays, so you're doing SPX. And as I understand it, are you doing like iron condors? Are you doing put credit spreads?
I trade puts significantly down, 38, 3,900. I hear the market's fallen again today. And I trade safe call spreads. So, you know, I've made 9% last month.
Wow. SEC didn't slow down Karen Bruton.
Nope, they don't.
So Karen, are you so you're doing what, 50 wide spreads? Is that kind of what you're doing? Did I hear that right?
No, the spreads are, that's correct.
And are you doing
50 wide spreads?
And what's your delta of your short puts and calls?
I don't know because I don't pay any attention to delta.
Okay. You're just looking to take in a certain amount of credit on the trade?
I trade at least 5% down.
Okay, so take wherever the spot price is of SPX and go down 5%.
Yeah, it's you know, that it's in the money percentage. I go down at least 5%, 100% out of the money. No, I'm saying that backwards. 5% down is out of the money. 100% is in the money. But I'm talking about puts.
Okay, so
5% down. I go 5% or lower in the money, positive.
Okay, so what you used to do is you would go down to a 5% probability of being in the money when you were doing the naked put, right?
Yes, I was.
Okay.
I was.
But
when I was doing the naked put, but I cover all of my puts now and make them a 50-point sell a put and buy a put 50 points down.
Okay, and for a 50 wide spread, any idea about what credit you're getting on that now? Bringing in.
I got. I'm getting 3 or at least $3 a spread.
Okay, $3 spread. And what days to expiration? Are you doing a 7-day, like a Wednesday to a Wednesday, or what expiration are you doing?
I'm going 14 days out of expiration. The expiration date is 14 days out.
Okay, on both the calls and the puts?
Yes. And I don't touch the calls and puts until Wednesday. And I decide what I'm going to do on Wednesday.
I love it, Karen. So 14 days. So now I remember you used to not, you would manage the put side and the call side separately. You viewed them as total separate trades. Is that still kind of how you're doing it?
Well, I get the call side for free, and I put on way up calls, out of the money calls, because I don't want to get in the money on the call side.
And I know how much you hate calls. I've heard that before. So
I hate calls,
yeah, I understand that totally.
but I trade them. I trade them.
Yeah. Well, and I think, Karen, when you're saying that you get the call side for free, you're meaning because you are having the puts on, that there's no additional buying power by putting the call spread on, correct?
Yes, that's what I mean.
And probably you're so far up, and since the skew is normally on the side of the puts, that you're collecting a much less credit for those calls, right? Well, you're going for $3 credit on the put side. Any idea about what credit you're getting on the call side?
I usually get 50 cents to $1
Okay.
on the call side.
Okay, still a good credit. Yeah, Dale says days to expiration. So she's doing DTE 14 days to expiration. Anyone else got any questions of Karen that you'd like to ask? Just hit your space bar. Sure, she'd love to entertain any questions that you guys have. Okay, Dale wants to know what is the management of the puts? Like if you've got a 14-day on and you're doing a 14-day every Wednesday. So when you get to the next Wednesday, it still has 7 days remaining, but then one of them will be expiring, I'm assuming.
Every Wednesday, my puts are expiring for that day. I got some on next Wednesday, and I just switch over every Wednesday.
Okay, and so the management would be, you used to would manage something if it got down to a 30% probability of being in the money, but since you're not looking at them, theoretically, I guess your strike could be breached and then you would roll that out in time. Is that?
I play my money every Wednesday. So that's why I'm playing 2 Wednesdays in a row. And I just decide what to do with them if they're in the money. I make money off of deciding what I'm going to do with them. And I roll them out and roll them down a little bit. And I either make money off of them or I lose money off of them, but $1 or $2. And I put out a wider spread, going to the 3,500s and that sort of thing, and putting 5 spreads on and covering the cost.
Okay, another question. Is she rolling any of the options? So she did say she rolls and she might increase the risk by widening the spread a little bit. do you ever get out before expiration of the put?
No, I never get out before the expiration of a put.
Okay. I'm about to cry, Karen, because these are my students that knew nothing about options, most of them, before we had this class. And here they're asking about rolling. They're asking about getting out before expiration. So another question from Lisa is great. It says, when you do roll them, are you generally going out another 14 days?
I generally am. I roll them out 2 weeks and then get to the next week's trade and roll that out 2 weeks. So I'm going every 2 weeks.
And y'all, where you and I, mere mortals, might see, dollar signs, Karen really just sees the math, don't you, Karen? It's just a numbers game.
It's just a numbers game.
All right, Jeanette, I know the answer to this one because I'm so familiar with Karen throughout the years, but I'll answer this. Jeanette wants to know if you use any stop limits at all.
No.
What's a stop limit, right? What's a stop? Who uses those? No, she doesn't use. I knew that. Karen, I don't use them either. What I do is more portfolio management, and I don't look at the individual trades. I always say, look at the forest first, and then if we need some adjustments, we'll look at the individual trades. Any other questions for Karen at all? We have her for a few more minutes before she's got to go. Any other questions? Karen, how was the experience of writing a book?
I was called when I lived on the island of Cyprus, and I was on that island to do ministry. I was called by Michael Blanton, and he said, "You don't know who I am, but I've heard stories about you, and I think a book needs to be written about you." He started the career of Amy Grant. He's worked with a gospel and country stars and regular stars all over the place. And I knew who Michael Blanton was, but he didn't know who I was. And we've become great friends. And he talks about a movie all the time.
Karen, I think it'd be a great movie. I really do. I couldn't wait for that to happen. Lisa wants to know, what's the main ticker that you're trading?
SPX. SPX. That it's the only trade it's the only SPX is the only trade I'm trading.
And that's one of the things I try to stress to my class as well. Don't think that you're going to be the next stock picker. A lot of people think that people like you, Karen, that have made multiple millions of dollars in the market, that you've got to be a stock picker. And so why do you choose the SPX, Karen?
It's serves everyone. The SPX is a device that people who do stock trading purchase that for if the stock falls, the SPX is going to not fall. And but the SPX has a little more in the trades. So I knew that, and I picked the SPX, and I used to trade NDX, and I used to trade the Dow, whatever it's called. And I just started trading the SPX only, and I make a lot of money trading the SPX.
Drew wants to know, Karen, do you use any hedges, or is this just your go-to strategy now?
Nope, I don't use hedges.
Let's see.
Oh.
Brad has a question. On each Wednesday, are you trading a bunch of different strikes with a 50 spread, or are you selling one put each week with a larger order? So you used to spread things out a little bit. So are you pretty much all at the same place with all of your contracts?
I trade the SPX all the time, and I've been the market has gone down about 200 points, and I'm hearing today that it's going down about 100 points.
Yeah, we're down 70 right now on SPX. So
Okay.
it's rebounded a little.
And I have a put on at 4,300, 4,250.
Mm-hmm.
And that doesn't bother me. I just move it down and roll it forward. I roll it. I am the tortoise, not the hare. And I just roll it a little, a little, a little, a little, and I eventually get it out of the money.
Lisa's got a question. What platform are you mainly trading on now?
What platform
Yes.
am I mainly trading? Tasty Works
Tasty Works.
is the only platform I'm trading on.
Yeah, it looks nice. I love it. We trade on that one. We still trade on Thinkorswim as well, and the students do.
Well, Thinkorswim, when I was charged by the SEC,
Oh no, they did something bad.
they wanted to get my money out of there, and I called they wanted to get my money out of there instantly. And I called a vice president that I knew and told him to give me through December the 31st to get my money out of there. And I won't trade with Thinkorswim ever again. And I've gone over to Tasty Works.
After all the untold money that you made Thinkorswim to be treated like that, it's just incredible,
yes.
Karen, to hear the way that these people did you. I got one more question, Karen, before we let you go, and it's this. So, you know, I've read the SEC complaint, the findings and all that thing. So apparently what they got hung up on was that your incentive fees or your fees that you were charging is that you were charging them when losses were incurred. But I think they just didn't understand what you were doing as far as rolling. And were you doing anything different than you had ever done with any of your clients?
Nope. No. I take it that the SEC didn't understand what I was doing. But the Chicago board and the CFTC that audited me understood perfectly what I was doing.
Unbelievable. Well, Karen, this has been just an honor and a privilege for me personally to speak with somebody that I've admired for so many years. And again, you're the reason that I got into trading. I mean, you really are, and to have studied you for a number of years. Is there any chance before we let you go, we'll make you a honorary Alabama Crimson Tider? Any way that a Tar Heel would ever give us a big roll tide before we go?
I will. Roll Tide.
Thank you, Karen, so much. It's been an honor, and you have a wonderful day. Thanks so much for your time, Karen. Everyone's saying thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, Karen. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.